My name is DuWayne Wilson. I'm northeastern Montana, and I have several things that are really important in my life. And obviously, the most important is my family and my wife and kids, and now my grandkids. I am a Christian, so God is and spirituality is a very important part of my life. And then my farm, my ranch, work. Life before my injury, I taught school for 25 years. We were living on a place that my wife and I bought. So we wanted our kids to be raised on a farm and ranch. Well, my dad had prostate cancer. He fought it for about 20 years. But as about my 25 years was getting up to an end, I knew it was time to move on to the next section of my life. And we took over day-to-day management and operation. So I was farming and ranching full-time. I got hurt on the last Saturday of January of 2016. Just a beautiful, beautiful afternoon, and was driving the team of mules around the yard, going to give my wife a ride, basically a buggy ride, but it was on an old wagon that we had. They were a little rambunctious, and I got leaning a little bit too far ahead on the lines. Went over the front of the wagon, landed on top of my head. Wagon passed over me. I was never unconscious, got moved out of the way somehow, was laying in the snow, and my wife come out from the house. She saw the mules headed back for the barn. She got out there. She didn't know what had happened or anything. And she come up to me to ask if I was okay. And I told her the first thing, I said, I can't move my legs. So she called the ambulance, and then the ambulance was on its way. And the rest is the beginning of my injury history. My first thoughts when I got hurt, and it's really strange because I'm not sure somebody who's not in agriculture fully understands that being a farmer and rancher was my job, but it's also my life. And I knew I had a son around, and I knew I had two more sons out there somewhere that could help. But my first thoughts was, who's going to take care of things? And am I going to be able to come home and live in my house then? How much of a burden am I going to be on everyone else? What am I going to be able to do? Can I feed myself? Well, my hands were still working when I got in the ambulance. That was the first blessing. At least my hands and stuff moved. When I was in ICU, I did work with some physical therapists on getting strength in my arm. Well, at the time, I didn't realize that my left arm was short of strength. My injury was a C7, between C7 and C8. And when I got into Craig, they said, right now, yes, you are a quadriplegic because your arms are affected, but we're pretty sure you can use a manual chair. So that's what we're going to line you up with. We're going to help you learn how to do it so you can be as independent as you possibly can at the level that you are. By the time I got home, we had basically decided that I would be living on the up floor of my house. We found an elevator to get from the garage into the house. My occupational therapist said, well, you are a quadriplegic, therefore you should probably have a power chair. And that was going to give me access to outdoors, because a manual chair where I live, I couldn't even get out of my house because we live up on a hill. She wrote a letter of medical necessity that convinced my insurance company that I needed a power chair. And not only did I need a power chair, I needed one that's all terrain. In the summers, I'm in it every day, all over the yard, all over, and I'm in a manual chair whenever I leave the farm. When I am in my house, I'm in a manual chair. As far as getting back to where I can and what I can do, one of the things I'm blessed with is that I can hug my wife and I can hug my kids and I can get around and I can still be active in my community. That was a big part of building, I'm going to say, self-esteem. Being able to drive was huge for me. I've got a link seat, and it actually comes down out of the driver's area. My pickup comes down, swings out, sets down next to my chair, and then I just do an easy pop over from my chair over onto the seat, and then it lifts me up behind the driver's seat. We've driven to Tennessee, Kentucky, Denver 5 or 6 times. I've driven to Billings. My son lives in Helena, which is 500 miles away. So when I first started driving, it was actually really nice. My wife said, this is the first thing that we've done that feels totally normal. About 2 years ago, we found a lift that could get me in my tractor. You have to move it from tractor to tractor. And It's a lot of work to move it. So I basically am relegated to one tractor, but it has a loader on it. I can rake with it. The way I look at it is if I don't have some of that assistive equipment, then I'm going to end up possibly doing damage to my shoulders. And your shoulders are not designed to be your legs. And so you got to really be cautious about protecting your shoulders and arms. My relationships with people have changed, not as much as I maybe thought they would have. I do have to rely on my wife for a lot of things, but I also had decided that I am not going to burden her any more than I have to. It's a strange story. I was very active in our church, and our church is old. It's over 100 years old, so it obviously wasn't very handicap accessible. We had been toying with the idea in our church, and this was prior to my injury, of getting some kind of a ramp or a lift or an elevator or something to help with the older people. Exactly 6 days before my injury, we had our annual meeting at church. I personally made the motion to get an elevator installed in our church. The next Saturday afternoon, I broke my neck. Well, then when I got back from rehab, I had made connections with the guy that put all the stuff in my pickup, is also the guy who installed elevators. So I became the liaison to our church. And by the next annual meeting, we had an elevator in our church. I had some struggle with something called spinal cord tethering, where the scar tissue that surrounds the spinal cord actually started to touch and push on some of the nerves in my spinal cord. And it was around the area of the injury. So I ended up having detethering surgery. But if you do suspect that you are having that, you need to get it diagnosed quickly, because if you lose function, there's a good chance you won't get it back. I think my most surprising accomplishment since my injury has probably been my relationship with my grandkids. I actually could pick my grandson up and put him in my lap. Then that became, he'd ride around in my lap, and we called it Zooming. And now I have 3 more grandchildren. They're all granddaughters. And in about another month, we're going to have a 4th granddaughter. And so they're never going to know me any other way. And as far as activities I'd like to see do next, I've never been a fisherman, but I would like to do something like maybe deep sea fishing. Kind of would like to try to snow ski. I was a skier when I was younger, in college age, and I'd like to do that someday again. And they have lots of those programs. Walking, as far as important goals in my life, I don't know that that's where I want to be. If I had to pick something, I'd maybe be able to urinate normally, stand up for a shower. To me, it would be those kinds of things I'd a lot rather have than to be able to walk. My life has always been defined by A, family, B, church, C, the ranch. Well, I'm doing all 3 of those things. So if doing all 3 of those things and walking was fine, why can't doing all 3 of those things and not walking be fine? I think the advice that if somebody was injured similar to me is make sure you ask the right questions. And the other thing is do the most you can do. Don't let somebody tell you can't do it. Yeah, your injury day is the worst day of your life, maybe, or could be, but you can have a lot of good days. So don't think that worst day is the end of your life, so to speak.